Welcome to the Business Blast podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wagner. This episode is brought to you by Authors Unite. Authors Unite provides you with all the resources you need to become a successful author. You can learn more about Authors Unite and join the free community at authorsunite.com. Now, let's jump into the episode. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Business Blast podcast. I'm your host, Tyler Wagner. Today I have Cody Mosley with us. He is a community development professional. So welcome to the show, Cody.
Thanks, Tyler. I appreciate you having me.
Of course, appreciate you coming on, and we'll dive in. The first question I have for you, Cody, is what's the best story from your life that has an underlying valuable message?
And I remember making a very significant announcement in our community one day in early spring. And later that evening, we got home and the neighbors are out in the street talking. And, my wife and I get out of the car and go talk to them for just a moment. We're immediately asked, have you heard the news? And these people knew that I worked at City Hall or knew that I worked for the chamber. And they still had no clue what we did. And so a lot of the work that community development, that public administrators do, people have no clue what's going on, even though we are working to make our communities better day in and day out. And so we don't necessarily see the recognition for that, but just understanding that we are making for a better community on a day in and day out basis really helps make you want to get up in the morning.
And what's the most valuable piece of information we should know that's within your expertise or industry?
Well, right now, I think that we're looking at workforce completely different than what we have in the past. And I grew up in an environment where, it's almost as if you didn't become a doctor or an attorney, you were somehow deemed a failure. And workforce today and what our companies and what our jobs are looking for isn't necessarily, an MD or an attorney, a legal degree, but it really is just someone who knows how to run a computer, who's willing to show up on a day in and day out. And so workforce is more critical now than ever before, especially in a competitive global marketplace. And so having communities that have ready workforce are really geared to attract the major investment moving forward.
And what is your best piece of overall business advice? So not necessarily industry specific.
Yeah, sure. I'd still say it is a little bit industry specific, but I think it is good for everyone. Invest in your team and invest in your community. So we want those employers. We want the decision makers really driving to make their professionals and make their employees better than what they are today, so that they can help. So. And invest in your community, because there are a lot of people working to, ring your cash registers and to bring new customers to your door.
And if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would that be?
I'd say trust your gut. I've learned that I've got great intuition, and just trust your gut. Kind of that the first thing that comes to mind is, or the first feeling that you have about a situation is typically right. And so don't second guess yourself. Really just go with what your heart's telling you.
And in your opinion, what's the key to happiness?
I think it's do what you love and surround yourself with the people that you love. And so if you are in that environment, I think that you're going to be really happy, and you're going to understand your priorities moving forward. And it's going to be, we're all going to have those down times, but as long as you've got that team to support you, I think that's really important.
And what's the best book that you've read, and what was the number one thing you learned from that?
I am not much of a book thumper myself, but I do remember a great quote on a TV series not long ago, and it's talking about if you want someone to run a 4-minute mile, you don't chase them. You don't give them something to run from. You give them something to run to. You motivate them in a different way. And so that has really stood out to me.
Okay, and then is that your favorite quote as well?
That is certainly.
Awesome.
That is something that really comes to mind right now.
Awesome. Okay, thank you so much for coming on. The last question I have for you before we let you go is, where's the best place for people to find you online?
Find me on LinkedIn, Cody Mosley, CodyMosley. Make sure that we're connected. I post some original content, but I'm sharing a lot of things that are impacting our communities all across the United States.
Perfect, Cody. Thanks again for coming on. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
The podcast you just heard was recorded with Anchor. If you want to make your own, download the Android or iOS app completely free from anchor.fm/podcast. That's anchor.fm/podcast.